So in this video, we're just going to take a quick look at some of the things we can do with Lodash, some of the most common things that we're going to be using, or that I'm going to be using, depending on if we need it or not. I just want to introduce it because it's a great library and it makes writing JavaScript a whole lot easier. And so yeah, if you head on over to Lodash.com, you'll see they have a page there, and they also have a great set of documentation if you click on API documentation. Now, definitely not going through all of these functions, but I guess I should probably sum up exactly what Lodash is. If you're familiar with underscore, Lodash was inspired heavily by underscore, but Lodash is considered to have superseded underscore in the recent years. Basically, if you're familiar with LINQ from C#, it's a very similar concept. If you're not, the idea is that this library provides a ridiculously large amount of helper utilities that mostly involve performing complex operations, or even simple operations, over arrays and objects. And it makes working with arrays and objects very, very easy. A lot of these functions that you're going to use take in other functions as callbacks. This is a very functional library. So generally you will be passing callbacks, predicates, and so on into these Lodash functions in order for them to perform different tasks. So let's set up an example. Let's set the stage here. I'm in app.js at the moment, which hasn't changed since the last time we touched it. And again, app.js gets invoked when we invoke index.js. So let's go ahead and just remove this nasty console log out. And let's start typing in some code. Before we do, actually, I do want to point out something here. On line 1, I'm actually breaking a rule that I mentioned earlier. It's not so much a rule as it is a convention. Basically, I'm not doing var Lodash equals Lodash. Instead, I'm doing var underscore equals Lodash. And the reason for this is, for this particular package, there's a convention already established that you will use an underscore. In fact, if you were to require Lodash on your browser, it will register a global object of underscore, much as jQuery will register a global object as a $sign. So let's go ahead and create some data to use. I'm going to create a new array called users. In this array, we'll have objects with an ID, a name, and an array of roles. So in this case, I'll be the admin. And let's go ahead and create a couple more of these guys. So I'll do 2, 3, 4. I'll do foo bar baz. Let's make foo a registered moderator. Let's make bar nothing. He's just a guest. And let's make baz a registered. This is all just really arbitrary stuff that I'm doing. But I just want to show off a handful of the most important aspects to Lodash and the two ways that we can use it. Okay. What if we wanted to get the name of all the admins in users? Now, we could certainly write a for loop and blah, 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 loop through all the objects, extract them, add all the admins to an array, grab their name, print them out, whatever. Or we could do this. Var admins equals underscore, or Lodash, users, dot filter, u goes into dot contains u roles admin, followed by pluck name, followed by value. Now I can say console log admins. I can come over here. I can do node dot, and as you see, I get an array of names, and there's only one admin, so I get Nelson. If I were to create another admin, maybe Bleh, and make him an admin, as well as a moderator, that doesn't make much sense, but whatever. Now, see, I get Nelson and Bleh. So there's a little bit to talk about with Lodash just in this short example that you need to be aware of when working with it. We use two different ways of working with Lodash in this example. The first one is that we wrap users in the underscore function. When you wrap an array or an object in the underscore function, all of the, or most of the Lodash functions become available on the object. For example, filter. So when I wrap users in Lodash, I can now do .filter, kind of like IEnumerable in C# or iterator in Java. Then I can invoke filter out things I don't want or do want. I can do pluck, which pluck takes a object and returns the value of the object at that key. But then when I'm done with it, I want to actually execute all this stuff. So then I do .value, which actually goes out and performs the operation. For example, if I took out that value, did admin's value here, and then did users.push, and pushed in a new user, that's also an admin. Let's call him whoa. Let's make him only an admin. And let's change his ID to 6, so we're not getting conflicting IDs. And then I invoke this again. Check that out. On the first execution, I just get Nelson and Bleh when I invoke value. On the second execution, I get Nelson, Bleh, and whoa because I modified the array. So you can see here that the value is what you use to break out of a wrapped a wrapped Lodash object. So we wrap it here. That makes it like a superpowered array, basically, if you want to think of it like that. It would be more appropriate to say it turns it into a iterator or an enumerable. We invoke methods on it, but these methods don't get executed until we do .value. So that's a really important thing to understand. It's also a very powerful thing because we're not performing the operation just yet. We're just constructing the operation. So now let's take a look at filter. What does filter want? Well, filter is going to want a function that takes in a parameter and returns true or false. So if we wanted everybody, we could replace this entire line of code with true, and that'll just return everyone. If we wanted nobody, we could do false. But obviously that's not very useful, so we perform an actual operation here. Now, this is the second way you can invoke most Lodash functions, and that's by doing _dot followed by the function name followed by the object. So notice on filter, there's two ways to invoke filter. The way you see here, or we could do .filter users followed by the predicate, right? So we could do it like this, but in this case, we've already wrapped it in Lodash, so we can invoke filter without having to specify the users again. But in this case, we didn't wrap it. So we didn't wrap the user.roles. So we do _.contains, pass in the array, and then pass in its expecting arguments. In this case, the object that we want to see if that array contains. And then we simply pluck out the name. So really, I'm just wanting to show this to you guys so you get a handle on the general syntax and philosophy of this library. It contains a wide variety of functions. If you're ever in a position where you really want to work on an array or an object in a more functional way, check out the documentation and go find an object that, or a function that does what you want. Let's talk about another example. So .filter is something I'll use a lot. The other one that I'll use is map. So let's say I want to go ahead and I want to turn this array into something that looks like Nelson admin followed by foo registered moderator and so on and so on. Let's say I just want to turn that array into an array of these strings. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and say var user role list equals wrap users. So I'm wrapping users again in Lodash. Then I'm going to invoke map. I'm going to say u goes into, and then I'm going to use string templating, and I'm going to say u.name colon, and then I'm going to use another string template here, and I'm going to say u.roles join on comma space. And then I'm going to say values. Now I can do console log user role list. I don't have to specify values again because now we just have an array. And if I were to invoke that, or whoops, I said values, didn't I? I meant to say value. There we go. So now we see we have an array of strings with that format. So name followed by roles. So that was a really, really quick way in very few lines of code to accomplish that using two of the ES6 features that I think are most important to understand. Now, two more things. Just another example. Here's something that you might, a function on Lodash that you might find very useful. Let's say I want to find a specific user that has the ID of 4. So I'll say user equals .find, pass in users, and then pass in an object with the ID of 4, and then console log user. So this is really cool for doing a linear search on a array of objects. So now I can do node dot, and I see that the user with the ID of 4 is returned. So this is another example of using the underscore dot syntax. Remember, if you do that, you have to provide the data source as the first parameter, as opposed to when you wrap it, you don't have to provide the data source as the first parameter. And you'll notice here that that what find expects is an object, or one of the overloads that it works with is an object that has a key that has a value that we want to search for. And find will return the first instance of that user, so there's no need to call value or anything like that. Alrighty, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and this actually plays into some NPM specific things, not necessarily Lodash specific, but Lodash provides a great example of it. And that is, what if we wanted to include a file that's located in a module that we've installed? Like for now, right now, you see that we have require Lodash, and we're just importing index.js, right? Because that's how Node works with directories. Although we can override it. We'll look at that in a future video. But what if I specifically, I don't know, what if I wanted this array.js? I just wanted to include array.js. Notice how array.js simply requires in all the array-specific functions, but nothing more. But all I want is array. So how do I do that? Well, it's actually very easy. I can simply say var array equals require Lodash / array. And now I can do something like console log array.first users, which will print out the first user. As you can see, I'm being printed out right there. So if you want to access a file inside of a package you've installed, you start off with the package name on the left, and then you specify inside that package where you want to search for. So Node will first find the package specified by the first thing on the left, and then once it finds that package, it'll then search for this file. So you could even import specific functions like this. So array is a group of functions. But let's say we wanted to import collection each. Well, this is just an alias for each. So this is the code for each. So what if we just wanted that one function? Well, we could do that too. I can say var each equals require Lodash collections, or collection each, and then I can say each, pass in my object users, and then pass in my function that'll be invoked on every member of this item. So console log user.name. Now if I run this, we see that all the individual names are printed. So this is a way to, again, it's the same concept as what we saw with an array, but the difference is we're only pulling in a single function this time. Now, not all libraries will want you to load up their internals. Lodash in particular was written to be able to pull in only the functionality that you want. But not all libraries are going to be like that. However, understanding that you can reach into a module and grab a specific file is very important to understand when working with Node modules. Anyway, that was just a really quick and dirty introduction to Lodash, just showing off some of the things that I may or may not be using for the rest of the series. I use this library all the time. It's one of my first things I pull in because inevitably I'm going to run into something where it's useful for. Highly recommend adding it to your own arsenal and checking out the documentation. Anyway, I think that pretty much wraps this up. So I guess in the next video, we're going to take a look at how we can actually lock down our dependencies and create basically our own Node package, but it's not really like that. It's something you're going to want to do for every project that you work on. So we'll see you then.